Hi, I'm Niharika Nanda and you are listening to Express Podcasts. The National Education Policy 2020 marks a bold shift in how we think about technology in learning. It envisions a future where students build not just digital literacy, but also computational thinking and AI fluency, and where teachers are empowered with the tools, training, and support to integrate artificial intelligence into their curriculums meaningfully and responsibly. In the fourth episode of our series in association with Central Square Foundation, we are going to discuss the evolving landscape of AI in education. Recent advancements in AI have unlocked capabilities that hold immense potential to catalyze innovation in education. There is emerging evidence on AI in education for solutions that personalize learning to the child's level or support teachers with pedagogical resources. From intelligent assessments that offer real-time feedback to enhanced lesson planning, the potential of AI to transform education is immense. The lasting impact of AI is already being felt in classrooms worldwide, with AI poised to reshape the way we learn, teach, and innovate. In this episode, we will try to understand prominent use cases of how AI is already transforming teaching and learning in India, debunk common myths around AI in classrooms, and identify pathways to make AI adoption inclusive and scalable in government schools. Joining us today is Gouri Gupta, Senior Project Director of EdTech, who leads CSF's work in EdTech and Artificial Intelligence, and Professor Balaraman Ravindran, Head Wadhwani School of Data Science and AI, IIT Madras. He is one of India's top AI researchers and has helped shape India's AI policy framework and currently advises the Reserve Bank of India on the uses of AI in finance. So Gouri, let's start with you. What are the most promising ways in which AI can be leveraged to reimagine education and to strengthen or enhance the teaching learning experience of children in classrooms? And how are you at CSF thinking about this?
That's a great question, Niharika. Thank you. I think we are at a very interesting inflection point of discovery because there are multiple experiments which are happening all over the world to figure out how AI can be leveraged to reimagine education. But I think the one unanimous opinion that is coming out is that it is not going to replace teachers, but it can help amplify their impact. And I do believe that recent advancements in AI have unlocked capabilities that hold tremendous potential to catalyze innovation, right? And let me give you a few examples. So one of the most impactful interventions in education is personal tutoring. And there have been multiple studies that demonstrate that it is, one of the most evidence-backed interventions in education. It was never possible to implement it at scale earlier. Right. But now with advancement in generative AI, we can think about personalizing education for children at scale. Right. And hence, it becomes a very powerful enabler to provide this personalized actionable feedback, providing analysis of recordings of classroom practices, etc. The other place where I think AI can be extremely powerful is in providing support to teachers through personalized coaching. But with generative AI, there is a possibility for a teacher to record a classroom and to get feedback that is only meant for herself, right, for her to improve. So these are two very impactful interventions that we see. The third one is essentially around being able to assess where a child is at a very high frequency and being able to then tailor instruction basis the performance of the class, right? And this is called AI-powered assessment-informed instruction, another very impactful use case that can really help improve learning in the classroom. Having said that, I do want to call out that given that this technology is so new, we still need to figure out the evidence for what is actually working, how is it working, and how can it be delivered at scale. And it is in that context that, responding to your question of how CSF is thinking about it, we are saying two things, right? One is that we already had a lot of interesting EdTech, which was helping improve student learning outcomes or helping the teacher transact better in the classroom. There are ways in which generative AI can actually power these EdTech solutions and make them more personalized, allow them to scale faster in terms of their ability to generate content, etc. So that's the one use case that we see of generative AI, which is to strengthen existing edtech solutions. And the second one that we see is for it to be able to actually create these new teaching learning experiences that I was describing. But we also realize that this is such a new and emergent technology, right, that we can in no way imagine all the possibilities with it. So we at CSF are thinking of setting up a EdTech innovation hub, which will, almost gather ideas from, young professionals, students, etc., on what is the possibility to build educational interventions with AI. And, we hope to be able to have another conversation, Niharika, next year, where we have many, many more interesting use cases that we can talk about in the context of education and Gen AI.
Right, and as you said, the possibilities are truly endless. And Professor Ravindran, now coming to you. As we introduce AI into classrooms, two common concerns often come up. The first one being the belief that AI in education is just another passing tech fad that promises more than it delivers. And the second one being the fear that AI might reduce children's creativity if students start relying on AI to write stories, solve problems, or generate ideas. What would you say to educational leaders who worry that AI in classrooms is just a latest tech trend, and how do you see AI being used in ways that enhance creativity and critical thinking rather than replacing it, especially in the context of school education?
So let me start with the first part of your question. So we're talking about whether AI is a passing fad or not. In fact, I would go to the extreme and say that, education as we know it is probably over. So just the usual classroom instructions and looking at students working on assignments and learning through interactions in the class and things like that, that's going to be soon a thing of the past. Because what AI, the current generation of AI tools have done is given access to enormous volumes of information. And the key point here, I mean, of course, Google gave you access to enormous volumes of information, right? But what has AI done is it does it in a way that is so easy for you to interact with, right? You can have a conversation with your information, which was not something that was possible earlier. And this way of accessing and processing information it's very powerful, right? So this communication challenge, right, is something that the current generation of AI tools have overcome. And the students are going to use it. Whether question is, are we going to guide them properly to use it? Or are we just going to, become like a wild, wild west where they just, get exposed to all kinds of information and all kinds of, wrong ways of using these tools? As Gouri was pointing out earlier in her response, right? There are so many different ways in which these tools are helping both the teachers and the students learn. And it's no way a passing fad. Even at IIT, right? We are starting to rethink about how we give assignments. Right. I mean, it just doesn't make sense for me to give assignments to students because they can just go and, start, interacting with one of these ChatGPT models. In fact, I even took some of the open-ended questions I used to give in the past and ran it past these AI models, and they were able to give very reasonable answers. I mean, these are open-ended questions. I mean, there are no right or wrong answers, right? It's basically to see how you reason through these issues. So I had to stop giving assignments in class. So, I had to make them sit in the class and solve problems without access to an AI model, right? So we have to start rethinking, how we do education. It's not a passing fad. It's going to fundamentally alter how classrooms would be structured going forward in the future. And the second question you asked was about creativity, right? So, there are different ways of looking at it. So if you think about it, when people started using calculators extensively, right? So, there is always this question that you're going to lose your, fundamental numeracy. I think you can't do arithmetic anymore and things like that. And arithmetic has become a challenge. Most kids nowadays can't add numbers in their head, right? So people of my generation can certainly do non-trivial, arithmetic. So one way of parsing this is to say that, hey, look, it's not that you're going to become, less creative. It's just that you're going to be able to use AI for, a little bit of the mundane things and then think at a higher level, right? So we have to train people how to use these, just like you use calculators and then think about doing higher mathematics. Like that, you should think about how would you use AI and then, elevate your thought process, elevate your creative process to a level which was not possible earlier. In lower grades, you cannot use a calculator. You have to do pen and paper arithmetic. There has to be, a more gradual way of introducing children to problem solving using AI tools. But first they have to have some training in the faculty of critical thinking before they switch to starting to use AI to solve problems.
And Professor Ravindran, if I can just add, right, we keep doing these dipstick surveys as part of our work in CSF to figure out, how students and teachers are using AI. And we see significant shifts happening in a 3-month period, right? So 3 months ago, for example, we did a survey and we found that there was, usage of AI, but limited awareness around it. 3 months later, we find more rampant usage, more awareness. So this is a technology that, is getting embraced at much faster rate than what we have ever seen before. And hence, it almost what you're saying is so important that, the education system has to be one step ahead in figuring out how to deal with it and what is the guidance that needs to be provided.
Absolutely. And I feel the key word here, as you mentioned, is elevate. To use AI to elevate the skills that can be developed through education. And Professor Ravindran, we are beginning to see real promise in how AI could help us tackle some of education's toughest challenges. But when we bring this conversation into the context of India's public school system, there is often a perception that building or using AI, especially Gen AI, is simply too expensive or out of reach for government classrooms. So what would you say about this particular myth that AI is only for affluent users and that most tools are premium priced and out of reach for most of India?
I think it's misconception that accessing AI is out of reach of most of India. So that is AI and that is AI. I mean, it's not like every student learner needs to have access to the AI that can crack the math Olympiad problems, right? So we are really looking at AI that helps them to learn and makes the whole the learning process much smoother, right? So in that sense, right? So the 2024 annual State of Education survey report, right, said that nearly 82% of children in rural India, between ages 14 to 16, already use smartphones and have access to some form of AI or the other, right? Whether it is through chatbots, whether you're talking to your phone, right? Whenever people are using a voice interface to search for something, right, they are using AI. Right, whether they know it or not. So there are a lot of ways in which they are already interacting with AI tools. And so it's not access, right? It's how they are using it to learn, right? That becomes more of a challenge. So when we start thinking about, a school giving more systematic access to AI systems, right? So we did some back of the, envelope computation in some sense, right? So both at, CSF and CRI, the Center for Responsible AI that I had. So we did some work on this. And then we figured out that if you're using a medium level commercial tool, right? Not necessarily the most expensive of these tools. So if you're using for example, you don't need access to the latest, greatest GPT-5, right? You could use a version that is, N-1 or N-2 version that is out there. And then having students work with this, right, can be roughly as low as about 100 to 110 rupees per student per year if we are thinking about a scale of about 10 million students. And this can give the students an access of about 45 minutes interaction time with an AI every week and with about 10 minutes of chatbot interactions, right? So even using this high level AI. I mean, if you kind of structure your curriculum, structure the assignments in such a way, this is good to give the students a significant exposure to how to use AI to learn. But then the true inclusion, true impact would come when we start building our own sovereign models, right? So, and then a lot of effort is going towards that in India right now. And so if you start looking at our own sovereign models, you can actually bring the cost down to, roughly 25 to 30 rupees per student per year and provide about 1 hour of AI usage per day. Assuming that you're able to invest a significant amount upfront, right? I mean, it will take a few crores, maybe 14, 15 crores of investment upfront, but, this will get amortized over several years. Let's say reasonably we can take a 5-year window on which, you would like to provide these services based on the models that we build. So in which case you can give, daily access to the students, non-trivial daily access to students to use AI. And this can certainly have a much, much broader impact, right?
Right. And Professor, what are the efforts being undertaken by the government and academia to make AI education truly accessible and scalable across the public system?
So there are multiple, initiatives that are being taken. So the biggest challenges in the Indian ecosystem, right, is the access to compute, access to data, and access to sovereign models, right? So sovereign models being ones that, that are good in Indian languages, that are going to be trained on Indian data and run on Indian systems and Indian hardware. And access is to India first, right? So these are what we call sovereign models in some sense. And so access to sovereign models, access to actual training data, and access to compute resources have always been a challenge. So the government is addressing each one of these directly, right? So there's a lot of effort that has been now done to provide subsidized access to GPUs for people who are trying to build these sovereign models. And then there is also several funding initiatives by both the Ministry of IT and as well as the Ministry of Education towards, building models that are tailored to specific applications. The Ministry of Education is now funding a AI Center of Excellence where the goal would be to build these models to help address FLN, particularly targeted towards government schools in rural areas where the literacy component has to be addressed in the local language. So whatever is the language that's spoken at home, right? So that's the goal. And they are basically trying to push both academic research and in industry adoption in that direction. So that's something done by the Ministry of Education. And likewise, there's a lot of effort in building data sets, right? So Indian specific data sets and for building these foundation models. So quite a bit of effort is being put into that space. And one nice thing about the latest round of funding that the government has been doing. I mean, this is non-trivial amount, right? I'm talking about several hundred crores and a couple of thousand crores from the Ministry of IT and so on and so forth. The goal has always been to produce technology that is deployable at scale across the country, not just in well-connected cities, but also in rural areas. So I think this focus that the government is pushing everyone to look at, right, will have a much, much broader impact. In fact, we participated in this call for this education COE, right? AI for education COE. And the questions that, we had to address while we put together our proposal were all about, scaling. It's like, hey, everybody knows that AI can be used to solve problems. We don't want to hear that. How will you scale it to the nation level, right? How will you scale it to rural areas where the connectivity is going to be a challenge, right? And things like that. So I think the government is on the right path, encouraging both industry and academia to think about solving problems for India. And a lot of the academic research, particularly, AI for Bharat here and in IIT Bombay, what the efforts that they're doing, I think all of this are basically focused on addressing this Indian language fluency in these models, right? So I think that's a big push that's coming from the academic side.
Right. And Gouri, now coming back to you, why is equipping students, parents, and teachers with AI literacy a critical foundation for driving responsible and large-scale AI adoption in education? What is CSF doing in this regard?
Yeah, so Niharika, you just heard Professor Ravindran talk about the huge thrust and investment that is going into ensuring that AI-powered tools become available for education, right? And in order for teachers and students to be able to responsibly adopt this, right, AI literacy in our minds becomes critical. Right. So first, let me even start by defining what AI literacy is, right? So in our minds, AI literacy refers to the knowledge and practice that helps students, teachers, and parents understand what AI is, how it impacts our increasingly digital lives, and how we need to use it meaningfully, safely, and responsibly. And I wanted to give this definition in order to almost differentiate a little bit between AI literacy and AI skills, right? Which is about saying that, look, I have the technical skills to build and create AI versus I have the knowledge and the understanding to responsibly use AI. And we believe that every educator, every student, every parent in India needs to be AI literate because AI is proliferating their lives in manners which is hard to understand. So in this context, in collaboration with the Wadhwani School of Data Science and AI at IIT Madras and supported by Google.org, CSF actually launched an initiative called AI Samarth. And there were multiple parts to AI Samarth, right? So there was one part to say that, look, we need to build a curriculum for government school students and teachers that is contextual for India. Right, that is contextual to the starting point of students and teachers, right? And that was the first thing that we did, which was a curriculum build, and that curriculum is available on the AI Samarth website. The second part was to build learning stacks around this, right? Because there's not as much content for AI literacy in the Indian languages suited to the Indian context as we would want it to be, right? So there are learning stacks that are built for both teachers and students that can be used in online modes, but can also be used to deliver this instruction in the classroom. And then we wanted to actually scale this initiative across India. And hence we've partnered with organizations that are working currently in middle school. So grades 6 to 9 across, multiple states in India to deliver this curriculum and content to 5 million students and teachers in the first phase, and hoping to really scale this up across India. So we believe that this combination of building out a curriculum, the content stack associated with the curriculum, and ensuring that it gets adopted at scale will at least, be the first step in introducing AI literacy within the education system in India.
Can I add one point to that? So CBSE is very keen on introducing AI into the curriculum starting from the third grade. So in fact, we have been having conversations with them and trying to figure out what it means to start, introducing kids in the third grade. And so we have been proposing a very gradual introduction to AI from a very early stage in their learning, so that they kind of, because even at the third grade level, the students are starting to interact with AI, right? So they really need to know at least the best practices, how to stay safe when you're interacting with AI models, and, things like how not to have any transference of emotional attachment to AI and so on. So those are the very, very fundamental stuff, even at the early stage that, kids should start understanding. So it's going to be societal interactions are already changing because of AI models, right? People are isolating themselves more and more, and especially teenagers, and interacting with AI models. I think literacy, both at early ages for the children as well as the parents and teachers, is becoming more and more imperative.
Right. And Gouri, a common myth we encounter is that AI literacy isn't a priority for children from low-income communities, that we should first fix the basics before introducing something as advanced as artificial intelligence. But this assumes AI is a distant or optional concern. In reality, children from all backgrounds are already engaging with AI, as Professor Ravindran also mentioned, whether it is through voice assistants or recommendation algorithms or automated chatbots, without necessarily understanding how these systems work or impact their choices. So my question is, how do we bust this myth and build a strong case for AI literacy as an equity issue, not just for future skills agenda? And what should we keep in mind to make AI literacy truly meaningful and accessible for learners from underserved communities?
Just following up from Professor Ravindran's point also, is the fact that, with AI literacy, we are not talking about children coding neural networks, right? We are talking about helping them recognize when they are interacting with AI, how are these algos shape what they see and hear, how to question them and use these systems responsibly and ethically, right? In that sense, in my mind, it's as fundamental as, any form of digital literacy that we need today. Right. And for low income learners, in my mind, it's almost like a justice issue, because the truth is that, children in these communities, and we've been saying it over and over again, right, they're already users of AI, but they are rarely the shapers of this, right? And global frameworks, whether it's the UNESCO's K-12 AI competency model or the OECD AI literacy guidelines, they all stress on the fact that equitable AI education must begin early, right? And also going back to Professor Ravindran's point on the fact that CBSE is wanting to introduce this early. But we need to ensure that, children going to government schools, affordable private schools, are able to understand and influence this technology, right? Rather than simply being the passive consumers who get acted upon by this technology. And hence it becomes, extremely important for us to ensure that AI literacy is something that is introduced for all children and educators and their parents as early as possible, right? And the idea is not to teach AI as a new subject, right? But to almost nurture that consciousness about AI, right? Helping these children see themselves as participants in this technology. Otherwise, we will further be widening the gap, right? Between children and teachers and school systems that will be using this technology, right? To do what Professor Ravindran was describing as do more, right? And those who are just unaware and not being able to use it well. And hence, just to say what you were saying, Niharika, right? In my mind, it becomes an equity agenda, because it's not just about access. It's about, the agency to be able to use it well.
You were listening to Gouri Gupta and Balaraman Ravindran in the 4th episode of our 5-part series in association with CSF. This episode was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by me, Niharika Nanda. If you want to listen to the previous episodes of this series, the links to the same are provided in the description. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcasts or write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.